I'm just a yeasty guy. It's how I am. And you know what? I have no shame in the fact that I put nutritional yeast on my asparagus. I put it on my broccoli. I put it on my dog. I eat it straight out of the jar. I seriously use nutritional yeast all the time. And I've always been telling people that it tastes delicious, but I've never been able to describe a lot of the science other than the fact that it's rich in B12. Well, now there is a lot of interesting data specifically surrounding beta-glucans, a specific kind of component that is in nutritional yeast. So let's talk about the unspoken benefits of nutritional yeast and why it's kind of my superfood to put on just about everything. First things first, yes, it's a complete protein, but you're not getting much protein. Yes, it's super rich in B vitamins. Great. It tastes delicious. Great. It's great for vegans. Great. It's great for people that just want to make veggies taste good. Great. But let's get down to the granular. I'm going to start with some of the stuff you may already know, and then we're going to get into the weird stuff. Okay, from the B12 perspective, one simple 5-gram serving has 313% of your daily requirement of vitamin B12. Okay, if you are deficient in vitamin B12, you end up with these larger sort of dysfunctional red blood cells. Okay, and when you don't have good functioning red blood cells, you have less oxygen binding to the hemoglobin, and that means less oxygen getting to cells. Okay, Johns Hopkins School of Medicine had published that being deficient in vitamin B12 can end up leading to like weakness, fatigue, numbness, all kinds of nausea, just kind of feeling delirious because you're not getting oxygen to the cells. So pretty straightforward. So a quick way to get those vitamin B12 levels up a little bit higher that can support the red blood cell function. The other interesting thing that people don't talk about with B12 is how it affects the nervous system. So let's say you had an injury and your nerves needed to regenerate. Well, one of the things that would need to regenerate is the myelin. That is the sheath that is on the outside of a nerve, and it's where a signal gets sent, right, down that myelin sheath. Well, myelin is formed in what is called an oligodendrocyte. Okay, now where vitamin B12 comes in here is vitamin B12 is required for the DNA synthesis that happens in that oligodendrocyte. So that is very important when it comes down for just proper nerve function, but it's also very important for neurotransmitters, for creating like serotonin, creating dopamine, all of these things. Okay, vitamin B12 plays a role in the conversion of homocysteine into methionine. Without vitamin B12, we cannot create what is called methionine synthase, which we'll talk about again later on in this video. So in essence, vitamin B12 is required for the enzyme methionine synthase that is needed to convert and ultimately create a neurotransmitter. Okay, now I'm going to touch on this one lightly, but vitamin B12 also plays a role in bone density. It has to do with vitamin B9. Okay, without vitamin B12, B9 cannot do its job to support bones, to actually make the bones tougher and stronger. Now let's move on to the weird stuff that is very cool, the immune system stuff. Okay, so nutritional yeast isn't just like a random yeast. It contains alpha-mannan and what are called beta-glucan fibers. These are very unique fibers, and they can have an effect on our innate and our adaptive immune system. There was a study that was published in the journal Nutritional Biochemistry, and it found that beta-glucans act like a prebiotic fiber that can change the bacterial biomass within our gut. Now, this is a huge thing because this plays a role in our innate and our adaptive immune systems. Not only is it a fiber that can aid in digestion and whatnot, but it is a fiber that triggers a pretty massive production of butyrate. Okay, these are short-chain fatty acids that act as signaling devices that influence how our immune system works. Now, these short-chain fatty acids don't just nourish the epithelial cells within our gut and support our gut barrier. They actually help trigger the macrophages and the innate immune system to do their job correctly. They regulate that. They regulate our body's immune response to different things. That's crazy that happens within our gut. Okay, then they also regulate what is called the differentiation of T cells and B cells, meaning in our gut, there is a regulatory effect to how our immune system attacks an invader. This is so unbelievably huge, and you wouldn't realize that you're getting this kind of effect potentially from something like nutritional yeast. Now, ways to use nutritional yeast before I get into some other interesting stuff. Okay, put it on veggies, put it on like asparagus, sprinkle it on artichokes, tastes really good. Sprinkle it on broccoli. What I do is I take those veggies, I put a little bit of coconut oil on the veggies, and then I put nutritional yeast on them and I mix it up. Because we used to put it on popcorn way back when. It tastes really good on popcorn, but that's not exactly the healthiest thing to do. Putting it on veggies tastes unreal. And then also, if you wanted to mix it with a little bit of ghee or mix it with a little bit of butter, that tastes really good too, and you make almost like a cheese sauce kind of spread. But also put it on kale and make kale chips. There's also a bunch of companies that make kale chips with them. I put a link for Thrive Market down below because you can get a bunch of nutritional yeast from them. You can get kale chips that use nutritional yeast. They have all kinds of different things that are using nutritional yeast as like a cheesy flavor and a way for you to get the benefits that I'm talking about. So that link is down below for Thrive Market. You can get all your groceries through them, super easy, and that link saves you 25% off your entire grocery order. So whether you're getting nutritional yeast or not, if you're getting groceries, try Thrive Market. I'm serious, it is a game changer because your groceries get delivered to your doorstep. They're a heck of a lot cheaper than most of the grocery stores, and the options that they have are the kinds of groceries you wish your grocery store would have. Things that are better for you, things that you can sort by different diet category, like keto or paleo or vegan or whatever. And then boom, it's at your doorstep in a couple days and you're done. And again, that link saves you 25%, plus you get to choose a free gift upon checkout. So that link is down below in the description for Thrive Market. Okay, now we get really interesting. There was a study that was published in the journal Cell Reports that demonstrated that beta-glucans can actually affect the epigenetic level of the immune system. Okay, so it can actually affect the programming of the immune system. This is known as the trained immune system. Now, in this particular study, they gave mice tuberculosis, which kind of messed up their little lungs, right? Okay, but they gave mice tuberculosis, and then they treated them, or they gave some mice control, and some mice they gave beta-glucans to. The mice that had the beta-glucans ended up having a modulated response with their immune system that allowed for the proper epigenetic activation of the genes that were required to produce specific inflammatory cytokines to prevent the infection from getting too strong in the pulmonary region. What that means in a very simple way is that these beta-glucans, these fibers, actually influenced epigenetics. Epigenetics are like being able to influence our genetics with things that we do in our life. Lifestyle factors that influence our genes. We have genes that we're born with, and then we have epigenetics. These are genes that get influenced based upon different things that we do. Well, beta-glucans influenced these genes to operate a little bit differently. So essentially what happens is it alters what are called histones, which then allows for things that are called transcription factors to come in and affect the genes, in this case, of monocytes, which are immune cells. This changed the immune cells so that the immune cells adapted quicker and upregulated an inflammatory process, which sounds crazy, right? We don't want inflammation, but we do want inflammation when it is productive and it stops something from coming into the system. So inflammation went up at the lung level just in time to protect these mice from tuberculosis. Now, we can't say this is 100% going to happen in humans, but when you start looking at the other data, it's just very, very interesting. But now there is a recovery piece that is even more interesting for someone that's like an athlete. Very interesting. It still has to do with the immune system. Because when you work out, you have an immune response. You don't realize it, but white blood cells, monocytes, all this stuff is getting activated. Well, this study was published in the journal Nutrients. Okay, and what they did is they took a look at a yeast beta-glucan supplement. So with this study, what they did is for 13 days, they divided people into two groups. One group took in a yeast beta-glucan supplement of 250 milligrams, and the other group had a placebo. Then they had them come in a fasted state and run at 55% of their VO2 max. Basically just do some pretty intense exercise, but not over the top. Well, what they found at the end of the study was interesting. Both groups had an increase in the immune response. That's a normal response, right? But the yeast beta-glucan group had a totally different immune response. The yeast group had a reduced response when it came down to their macrophage inflammatory protein 1 beta response. What this means, this is like the first response that happens after exercise with the immune system. So the placebo group had a 17.9% increase in this MIP beta 1. Okay, the yeast beta-glucan group had an 8.9% decrease. So they ended up having a significant improvement, which means that they were moving through the recovery phase faster. Okay, so in short, what this means is the group that had the yeast beta-glucans was able to move past the inflammatory phase and into the regenerative phase where inflammation is no longer favorable. It's pretty crazy. So somehow these beta-glucans are influencing the inflammatory response of recovery. Because right after a workout, the inflammatory response is our friend. Okay, we want a nice spike in that to trigger recovery. But at a certain point, it becomes detrimental. Once it's been happening for a longer period of time, it's actually impeding the regenerative muscle repair. So we want to get through that first phase fast. And it seems as though with this study, the yeast beta-glucans pushed us through that first phase fast, so the regenerative rebuilding phase was able to kick in faster. They also found when they looked at more data that myoglobin was decreased after 72 hours, which is exactly in line with what we would think. Since myoglobin levels decreased, that means that remodeling had occurred and the muscle was almost back to its fully normal state after 72 hours. Now, a lot more research needs to be done as to how this is working and why this is working, but it definitely seems to be linking with the fiber attribute that comes from nutritional yeast. So you have nothing to lose by taking in nutritional yeast. It's easy to add, there's pretty much no calories to it, it tastes delicious, and it makes veggies taste good. So it's a win-win-win-win all the way around the board. As always, keep it locked in here on my channel. I'll see you tomorrow.